AutoLine on the Road at Cars MBS virtual event has been brought to you by Mitsubishi Electric, Innovation Electrified, with special thanks to the Center for Automotive Research.
Thanks for joining us on our continuing coverage here at AutoLine of MBS 2020. I'm joined right now by Edgar Faler and Carla Bailo, both from the Center for Automotive Research. And great to have the both of you here to talk about your sessions. Thank you.
Oh, really looking forward to it.
Yeah, happy to be here, John. Thank you.
Edgar, let's start with you. You had a very interesting session that I was able to watch today, the evolution of mobility partnerships. Tell us a little bit behind the thinking of coming up with a title like that.
Sure, John. We were very fortunate to have three really disruptors in the industry and disrupting in the way that they are creating the future and building these partnerships that are funding some very, very exciting technology. From SoftBank, that is perhaps the largest single financial investor in mobility and spanning the entire continuum, everything from chipsets to hardware, software, automation, and mobility services. So a real and a global view. We had a Hella Ventures, more of a corporate venture, a speaker, and then more focused on some of the advanced safety technologies. And we had one of the startups that's help spending some of that money in the industry and doing some very exciting things around automation and heavy-duty trucking. Yeah,
in fact, talk a little bit about that company, because I had never heard of it before. Locomation, I think. I'm not sure if I'm saying it right, but tell us who it is and what they do.
Yeah, so they are a pioneer in the targeting the heavy-duty truck and everything that involves with a trucking logistics and that. They have trucks they were testing this week, in fact, on the road. One of the leaders, and I think it's very interesting. And I think some of the traditional auto suppliers out there should really listen to them, because it's they have a very, very interesting opportunity about commercializing their product, their technology, the opportunity with in solving driver shortages and that. So there's a commercial equation there that they I think stand to benefit from and solve some really interesting challenges for that industry.
Yeah, what I find interesting is the collection of people that you had on your panel. As you said, here's an AV startup. You have SoftBank, which is making all these massive investments, and then you had a corporate ventures company from Hella, investing in all this. What were some of the big takeaways that you got from those three different viewpoints?
Yeah, it was very interesting discussion. And I think, one that might strike folks as a bit perhaps out of the box or something they wouldn't think about is the role of government in this. Most people don't equate government with raising money or capital or that. But actually, the state of Michigan got props for Planet M and MDOT, and how they're partnering with, one of SoftBank's portfolio companies. So, very interesting. The other one being really geographic differences between Europe and the U.S. That Europe, while still having some very, very exciting technology, and in part represented by Hella and Hella Ventures, but the fact that Europe is not getting the same kind of capital in mobility necessarily that the U.S. is. So there's quite a bit of opportunity there that came out of our discussion. So those were a couple interesting takeaways there, I think.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that. And Carla, let me move to you, because you just wrapped up a fascinating discussion with Urmson from Aurora. He helped found it, and he's the CEO of the company. And by the way, he is also definitely one of the pioneers in autonomous technology. Indeed. I mean, this guy's going in the history books.
Oh, without a doubt. And, I was telling some people before I did the keynote with him, it's probably the most intelligent person I've ever gone, into a keynote session and a Q&A. So I was really quite nervous about that. And we did get a little geeky for a while, but it ended up being quite interesting, I hope.
Well, it did get a little bit geeky. He talked about a new LiDAR that they've developed with another startup, which I guess they've acquired right now.
Yes.
But he supported it all with video. So even I sort of understood what was going on there.
Yeah, it was helpful. He talked about Blackmore from Bozeman, Montana. And, their new LiDAR that uses actual frequency waves versus the standard pulse. So, yeah, he did make it so that even I could understand it pretty simply.
Yeah. Well, what do you think was the main message that he had for the car audience?
I think what he said was fundamentally, this is hard. This is really, really hard. Self-driving vehicles, they're not going to be here as quickly as we thought because it's a difficult problem to solve. And nobody is going to put this technology out on the roadways till it's safe. And safe for everyone, not just the people in the vehicle, but the people surrounding it. And, they're working diligently to find the algorithms, do the artificial intelligence, the machine learning, but there's just a lot of circumstances and conditions that need to be solved yet.
Yeah, and Edgar, maybe we get you back in on this too, because Locomation is focusing on trucks. Chris Urmson talked about the focus on commercial trucks. I'm talking big Class 7 and 8 semis, because it looks like that's coming a whole lot faster than cars in the showroom for the rest of us.
Yes, because they have a unique ability. I would direct you to some of the comments made by Locomation and some of their materials, but they're able to break that down, distill some of all that uncertainty, those edge cases, into just piloting the middle vehicle, the middle truck within a convoy, so they can begin to isolate some of the other variables that Carla mentioned, and perhaps be on the road sooner than some of these other autonomous passenger car vehicles.
Yeah, Carla, Chris Urmson mentioned that that looks like trucks are coming first, but he talked about Waymo already providing autonomous services in the Phoenix area and the like. There's a few other examples out there. So it looks like in certain areas, autonomy is moving forward. Maybe not like the hype built it up a few years ago that we'd all be driving autonomous cars by now.
Correct. And in all those cases, as he rightly said, they're all in a geofenced area. And I think many of us have said for a long, long time, you are going to see autonomy in geofenced areas. You're going to see that, well, it's now, and that's going to be expanded into larger zones. London's creating an autonomous zone. Singapore's creating an autonomous zone. That's going to come. It's coming within the next few years. But again, that's all autonomous vehicles in a geofenced area that, they're not going to be disrupted by, the human brain and the human-driven vehicles. They're going to be independent. Everything's going to be fully digitized, all the roadways. So again, it's safety, and we learn from that. And the more we learn from that, the more then it can be deployed more broadly.
Yeah. Look, I appreciate both your times here to bring us up to speed with what went on in your sessions. And I want to remind all the viewers that if you want to go into more depth and liked what you heard here in these little synopses that we're providing, go to cargroup.org. You'll be able to sign up. You'll have to pay the registration fee, but then you can watch everything that we just talked about. In any case, Edgar and Carla, thanks so much for your time right now.
Thank you, John.
Thank you, John. Appreciate it.
Our scene-aware interaction technology is capable of adjusting its output based on a spoken response from the driver. For instance, if the driver indicates that they cannot see the given landmark, the system will quickly identify alternate landmarks or improve the guidance sentence to provide a more detailed description.
Follow the silver car to turn left.
I can't see it.
Okay, follow the silver car in the leftmost lane.
Joining me right now as part of our continuing coverage of MBS 2020 are Bernard Swiecki and Kristin Dziczek, both from the Center for Automotive Research. Thanks for your time today. I really appreciate both of you being here.
Thanks very much, John.
Yep, thank you.
Bernard, let's talk with you. You had quite the lineup of economists and forecasters, and your whole session was called Automotive Outlook. Tell us who you had on the panel to begin with.
Right. So we had three really fantastic gentlemen: Mike Wall from IHS, Jeff Schuster from LMC Automotive, and Jonathan Smoke from Cox Automotive. And so we had two of your more traditional forecasters, along with Jonathan, kind of bringing a different perspective to it from his point of view, including what's happening with the used car market as well.
Yeah, and Carr always has this Outlook Outlook session, has had that for years. But man, now with COVID and all the changes going on, it must have been even more important to you to have this discussion.
Yeah, absolutely. This is, I think all years since this broke, we've had a time when folks are really hungry for information, and especially a panel like this that's very, very forward-looking. But this time I thought it was useful both for understanding what the heck just happened, what is it that we went through. And the good news is that it wasn't quite as bad as a lot of folks had feared. So that was positive. And I was also quite pleased to see that the forecasts are generally fairly positive, and they do call for a quite quick recovery to not necessarily 2019 levels, but something sane, something more sustainable for the industry.
Yeah. What other takeaways would you say you got from the session?
Well, I found it interesting that, for example, things are in the right buckets in terms of the financial parts of the market. By that, I mean, we're doing very well with pickup and utility sales. Those drive revenue into the industry for the automakers and not just the suppliers. And also on a positive side, inventory of used cars remains quite low. Used vehicle prices are high, and that's good for us in the industry who care about selling new vehicles, because that's our chief competing product, is the used vehicle market. And some of the things that we worried about influencing that, for example, the rental car agency bankruptcy, it won't flood the market to the degree that was initially feared. And so all of those things are sort of positive notches in the outlook for new vehicle sales and production.
Yeah. Kristin, you had a couple of Wall Street analysts, John Casesa from Guggenheim and Rod Leish from Wolfe. They weren't so sanguine that the market's just going to bounce back, right?
No, they weren't. And, the point of putting that session sort of at the end of the conference was, for 2 days, we've talked about, what are the technology futures, what's going to happen with electrification, are we there yet? We looked at trade, we looked at smart cities, and at the end of the day, somebody's got to pay for all of this, and the money side of things is very uncertain right now. The automakers have had better second quarters than were expected, and or even some of them were mildly profitable in North America, which is a very good sign. But this, CapEx that's required, the R&D that's required to have this electric and automated future is enormous. The needs are enormous. I think Rod Lash from Wolfe Research pointed out about $23 billion a year in CapEx, $20 billion in R&D, and another $9 to $10 billion in infrastructure that's necessary for the changes that are coming. And, the real question is, how is this capital going to flow? Is it going to come to traditional automakers who are, making these big bets, or is it going to new startups, some of whom have not made a car at all yet? But that seems to be where Wall Street is placing their bets, on those more new entrants who are really disrupting our industry.
I thought that was one of the important points, is that the startups, Tesla included in there, don't have to worry about the cost of their capital. In fact, they don't even have to worry about making a profit. They're given so much leeway by the investment community.
They are. And, the other interesting part I thought for suppliers was, some suppliers are making some good cash, and that might be a place where private equity plays a role, and that it's not a Wall Street funded endeavor any longer. And, we also talked a bit about consolidation in the industry and mergers and acquisitions and even spinoffs that could occur as this industry tries to rationalize where we are now and get ready for what's the future that's to come.
Bernard, there's so many new models coming out from automakers right now. And I'm not even just talking about the electric cars that are coming, just the normal, regular cars. What does your panel talk about in that regard? Because the industry is going through a trough. There's some suggestion even in your panel that maybe it's going to come back quickly, but not to the pre-COVID levels. Is that going to impact how many new models that the industry is going to come out with? And just with what Kristin said of, can they even get the capital? Was that discussed in your session?
Yeah, so John, that new vehicle freshness, it's both the challenge and the solution. So as Kristin mentioned, it takes so much capital, one, just for the supply base to ramp up to continue producing what we were before COVID. Never mind now taking this environment and adding new model introductions and new model development prior to those introductions. And so, yes, the speakers did talk about numerous delays of product launches that otherwise would have happened sooner, but ultimately will happen at a later time. The trick will be, to me, is to get as many of those vehicles as possible into the dealership floors, just because of the strong correlation between how old the vehicle is and how well it sells in terms of how long it's been on the market in that particular model. Now, in that regard, we do expect utilities and trucks to be favored in terms of where those development dollars go and where the launches go that you prioritize given limited resources. The speakers did really talk about the fact that the sedan has been hurting so far in this particular market.
Yeah, no kidding. And Kristin, it was very interesting in your session, too, as your panelists looked at what's going on right now. They're thinking that more people will work from home coming out of this pandemic than they did before it, that they're not going to be driving as much. Maybe we're not going to need as many cars. What else did you think and what they were talking about in those regards?
Well, there are, studies out that show, maybe up to 10 or 20% of people who are working from home may continue to work from home. And those numbers were much, much lower before the COVID pandemic took hold here. It also changes what type of vehicle you may need. If you're not using it as a daily driver and with a long commute, maybe people are going to be buying more family vehicles, more in the CUV, SUV category, because they're going to be, taking long family drives together when we're not taking planes to get to our vacation destinations. So, there was some discussion about, how that is changing and what that might do. We don't have a lot of headroom in the U.S. We have very high vehicle ownership per driver, per household. There's not a lot of room for growth there. And in markets where people are more reliant on public transit, there's big cost to owning a car. So, parking and insurance and, the time spent in the commute. So, the work from home trend, we still don't know where that's shaking out, but it's going to have some impact on the types of vehicles people buy and how they use them.
Yeah, well, you both had very interesting sessions, a lot of good information there. We want to direct our viewers, if you want to watch more, check it all out at cargroup.org, and they'll have all the information there of how you can do that. But Kristin and Bernard, thank you so much for your time. Very interesting getting these quick little synopses of your sessions.
Great. Thank you, John.
Thank you, John.